Hi, everyone, and welcome to Table Manners for Robots Season 3. Wow, Season 3. We made it to Season 3. Most importantly, we made it to 2021. I must be honest, there were times when I questioned whether I personally would get over the difficulty of 2020 and actually even get to see a successful 2021. And I'm pretty sure that you all are feeling a similar situation of it's a mix between accomplishment for having made it together with the degree of trepidation of let's not get too excited too soon, with all the uncertainty that we had to endure over the last year and a bit. There is a degree of worry and caution, and like I said, trepidation regarding the future. Can we make big bets? Can we take big decisions? Should we be waiting a bit more, testing the waters, waiting to see what happens a little bit before we take big decisions? These are all the things that us business leaders are running into as we approach and get really into the middle area of 2021. Well, on that note, I'm very excited to launch a new season and to launch a new spirit with regards to Table Manners for Robots. If you guys have been catching our shows early last year, you will find that the spirit of the show was very much along the lines of understanding this pandemic and its implications to businesses in general, but there was a specific emphasis around small business. So last year was very much about coming to terms with this thing. There was very much a message of let's survive it, let's figure out solutions. We got great feedback about the fact that we were being very solution oriented in our approach. We were looking for good quality solutions. We were trying to share those solutions, and we were trying to create a platform for business leaders to arrive and share these ideas and solutions one with the next so that we could all be better off as a result. So it was very much around protecting each other against this thing that was sort of coming at us. This year's show, based on the very nature of the timing of it all, excuse me, is really about a different angle around the pandemic. It's really about looking back and saying, wow, what just happened? It's about looking over the shoulder and going, I didn't see that coming, and I knew that I had to get through it. But now when I look in my rearview mirror, I see a thing that no one really even understood. And now that it's behind us for the most part, we can really go and see what happened to our people. What happened to our various groups? What happened to our economy? What happened to our society? What happened to the pockets of within our community? And now we're looking back and we're seeing all of the results. It's like, it's the feeling of early last year, we were in the hurricane and we were all hiding and we were all, protected, or to the best degree possible, we were trying to protect ourselves, and shelter ourselves from the elements. This year, it's really about getting out the house and stepping into perhaps what might look and appear like a sunshine. And we're looking outside and we're going, good, is there devastation outside? Are things broken? Or have new things, has this storm given rise to new things? So maybe there's a bit of destruction, but maybe there's some new growth. And that's what season 3 of Table Manners for Robots is all about. It's about discovering the growth as we emerge on the other side of the pandemic. For me, it's been a wonderful adventure of stepping beyond and stepping through this entire difficulty that the entire world, has gone through together as a collective. It's been a wonderful experience stepping through on the other side and going, there hasn't just been chaos and devastation as was originally, promised. And I say the word promised tongue in cheek. There was a lot of fear and worry about all the devastation. And yes, it's been a difficult period. Beyond just being a difficult period socially and economically, it's also been a difficult period from a personal point of view. We've lost people that we care about, and the message of the show doesn't in any way aim to disrespect that or invalidate that, but really there's so much more to this picture, and that's really what I want to get into as we get into the season. I want to look beyond just, is there a devastation to the economy? Has an industry disappeared? And I want to see, along with that, what was some of the creation that was present inside this difficulty that we all endured? Do we have pockets of growth? Do we have a new thing that no one saw coming that is now living there? Imagine post a storm, a heavy storm where we all were living in perhaps sheltered bunkers, and we maybe there was something bigger than a storm, and then we all emerge, and along with all the destruction, we also discover that there are brand new things that now exist and live and thrive that we didn't really see coming. And that captures the essence of what we want to go over and what we want to cover in this season. And we really want a lot of your participation and engagement. We want you to really be present. And it's not just because I want to have a lot of people to speak to, which, by the way, is really cool. But for me, it's about this show is an African show. And it's about making sure that we live that brand and we live that value by really showing up and participating as local African people, really getting together and talking and making this an African Wireside chat where we can all get around the table and share our stories and share our questions and really become part of this community and becoming really proud of our identity as an African technology show or podcast. Now, on that, um, Africa is no different to the rest of the world in terms of how we had to respond to the pandemic. We had to severely engage technical resources, become a lot more digital dependent than we ever have been as a continent. And while it is true that different parts of the world may have moved at different rates and made use of different pieces of infrastructure and thus emerged a little bit differently, Africa too has her story to share. And that's another beautiful aspect about season three. It's about really getting into the African story. What actually happened with Africa? What is her story? What did she endure? How did she emerge? The reality is that we are often depicted as the dark continent that is entirely devoid of resources. And sure, it is true, we may well be resource constrained, but the truth is that that constraint has bred her own innovation. And quite frankly, the reality of our insufficient infrastructure and perhaps even, we may go fast to say maybe even capability in a couple of areas, that has resulted in our own new solutions and innovations on the back of COVID. And I really do expect that inside this season, we're going to be really unpacking the African tale and not a copy and paste story that would sound as relevant in the US or in Europe as it does here. I really want to start getting into the nuts and bolts of the local stories. What are we facing? What are the local pockets of innovation that we are now going to start unearthing as a community and talking about and sharing? And beyond just the usual dark continent stories, which is the kind of theme that permeates any African discussion, I would really like to look at how we're not just successfully implementing international solutions locally, but how is Africa going ahead and leading the charge in solving her own needs? The unique needs that we as a people that we run into that exist locally. How are we starting to solve our own unique needs with our own local homegrown solutions? How are our young people who are emerging in this beautiful digital economy, how are they showing up and helping Africa respond to the challenges that we faced for a very long time? These are the things that we really want to double click on and unpack as we progress through the season. There are a bunch of other things I want to cover, and in the next little bit, when I give a bit of an update, I'm going to really go into the aspect of you, because it's true that we're going to cover all of this amazing macroeconomic context. There's going to be continental information. We're going to be talking about stories that are relevant to the continent, and all of this is fantastic. But ultimately, of what value of that is that, if not to directly benefit you? And so that's another dimension that we're bringing through in a strong way for this season of Table Manners for Robots. We're really putting you at the center. And if anything else, the African context is just the context through which we give the message of how this kind of innovation and thinking and discovery can inevitably wind up helping you. Whether you are a farmer, whether you are working in a corporate office, whether you are running your own company, doesn't matter what your current background and context is. We really want to see how can all of this inevitably wind up as something that can in fact positively impact the endeavor that you have selected for yourself. So on that, We are going to cut through to our first insert. The format of the show is a little bit different. We're going to actually go to a pre-recorded interview. It's a very exciting interview. It's an interview with someone that I look up to greatly. I'm very excited to, we're going to get into the introductions on the interview itself, but I'm very excited to bring my colleague and dear friend Videsha onto the show in this way. And what we're going to do is we're going to make after we do the insert, we're going to get into a little bit of the questions and make it a lot more interactive at that point. But for now, I hand you over to the insert. Enjoy. So super excited to be here with my dearest friend Videsha, who is not only a friend to me, but also a business mentor, someone that I look up to quite a lot. She also happens to be the chairman and CEO of Lexis Nexis South Africa. No small feat for someone of her age. Very ambitious, very successful individual. So now that I've fully put you on the spot, and I'm known for putting Videsha on the spot, she's made peace with the fact that that's what comes with being my friend. So now that you're fully on the spot, I just wanted us to have a very casual chat, not formal in the slightest. Let's just have a bit of fun, in the spirit of being playful and very much our personalities. Like, where are you headed with this business for Africa?
So, our North Star at Lexis Nexis is really advancing the rule of law. It informs everything that we do. It is what we are all passionate about. It is what I wake up every morning really looking forward to go and effect. And for Africa, I think, we talk about enhancing the potential of the continent, because that is, for me, the next step in what we do as Lexis Nexis. We all understand that businesses are here to make money, and Lexis Nexis is no different. However, from a personal perspective, a legacy perspective, I really want to be part of the movement of putting Africa on the map. And a big part of a country becoming competitive and really taking its right place is making sure that people have free and equitable access to the law, and that the law is really working for the people in the country. So, I think that's where we're heading as Lexis Nexis, is to enhance the potential of the African continent by advancing the rule of law.
Wow, that's really inspirational, really beautiful. I have goosebumps right now, and I love it when you say advancing the rule of law. Because as much as I'm familiar with the Lexis Nexis brand, I don't always associate it with that beautiful statement. And I think that, if we are going to create a new possibility here in Africa by advancing the rule of law, I don't think that we are going to have any trouble to get people on board with that kind of purpose. So that's absolutely beautiful. You mentioned a legacy, and you mentioned a legacy here in Africa. Is Africa a safe bet, taking into account that we are moving so rapidly to the cloud, we're moving to digital? Is Africa keeping pace? Like, all of your future plans and visions, how are they going to land in a continent that has lagged behind for so long?
Yeah, I think Africa, right? We innovate out of desperation sometimes and necessity. And not just in this role, but in many of my previous roles, I've seen how technology helps us leapfrog challenges, right? And I think when it comes to Africa, we're a really good case study of that, where we don't have to follow the roadmap of technology evolution step by step. We're quite good at leapfrogging a few things and making sure that we bring unique innovation that is very relevant to Africa. So no, I know that Africa is very innovative. I've looked at some of the things we've done. First drone airport in the world came from Africa. Silicon Valley of Africa is, Kenya, Rwanda. So I have no qualms that Africa will bring innovation to bear that is going to really speak to the challenges and the opportunities of the continent. And I believe personally that this is the last frontier in terms of where the next big thing is going to come from. It's going to come from Africa. And, I've had many opportunities to leave and to go work in many other continents. And I don't believe that that's where opportunity is at. And that's why I'm still here. So I'm a huge fan of Africa. I believe in the economic potential and the corporate successes that will come out of Africa. And I think that innovation, we're very innovative in Africa because we have to be resourceful and be innovative at the same time. So, that's a magic combination when you think of all the innovation that has come out of this continent to really address many of the challenges that we have. It's been homegrown. So yeah, I think we will develop for Africa, and we will make sure that Africa takes its place on the global stage.
Wow. Very, very, very inspirational. I've just changed all my future plans. I've canceled all my future air tickets. Africa, I'm here to stay.
Yeah, this
So-
is where it's at.
Yeah, and this inspires me because I know that Lexis Nexis isn't like the run-of-the-mill multinational where you are just importing product into the country. You are actually building product here. You are building product on African soil for African people. Just tell us a little bit about that, because that's a side of Lexis Nexis that we don't always see.
Yeah, it's a very exciting side of Lexis Nexis in that I've worked for many multinationals, and I mean, at the highest level, you could say that many multinationals in South Africa is a glorified sales and marketing arm. The difference I found, and it's probably one of the other reasons outside of advancing the rule of law that I joined Lexis Nexis, was because we develop locally for the local market. So there's a massive entrepreneurial culture in Lexis Nexis that really speaks to the cliche of think global, act local, because we don't build globally and then push it down into countries. We look at researching on the ground in specific countries, and then we build from the ground up. So I have a massive development team, a product team, with all the other arms that comes with being a corporate. And so, yes, we research locally. We understand the unique needs of the legal market in South Africa. And we take technology and we add it to that, and we come up with legal tech solutions that are very specific and unique, not just to the method of law that we practice, but to our customers and to the people that receive the service of our customers as well. So it's very local. But that being said, we also have the added advantage of having a global mindset. So we're able to go and venture into other markets and say, what has happened here? What has happened there? What can we pull into the process from a best known methods perspective? So, we can go through a POC at a much faster pace because we are able to glean insights from other countries across the world, being part of a global organization. So we kind of have the best of both worlds. You've got the processes and the structures and the compliance, etc. That's very much world-class and first world class. That comes with being a global company. And then you've got the entrepreneurial flair that's allowed to happen at a local level. And, we run a local P&L. So there's no big brother to save you. You've got to become profitable and run a sustainable business locally, which means you have to be very in touch with your market. You've got to understand your customers. You've got to understand what drives South Africa, and then put that together. So yeah, it's quite exciting. It's very different, but it's I think it's a winning formula.
So it's not just Lexis Nexis South Africa; it's more like the South African Lexis Nexis.
And we're also part of a parent corporation called RELX. So outside of just legal tech, we have sister companies in the medical sphere. We have Read Exhibitions, which is, deals in the consumer space. We've got so many. I mean, RELX has a plethora of companies under the umbrella. So we're very able to lean on for customer-specific data or customer-specific insights, not just, this is legal and this is tech. We can bring a flavor that most other companies can't.
Wow, that's fantastic. So now just all this insight has been tremendous, but just dialing it more into the subject of personal as a mum. So we've, we're all coming through this pandemic. We're coming through lockdown. And now, I know that your kids mean everything to you, and I know that that's no understatement when I say it that way. It perhaps is an understatement because you probably would say it a million times stronger. But having said all of that, can you give everyone a few tips and ideas and tricks about how did you cope through the lockdown depending on the power of technology behind you as a mom, as a chairperson, as a CEO. How did you balance all of these demands with tech as your enabler?
Firstly, I must say, I have a newfound respect for teachers. That is just insane. I think, yeah, we really underestimate what happens at school. Ignorance is bliss. So, yeah, no, it was very challenging. I have to say, having all of these roles, it's easy to do it because you leave home and there's a very distinct break and you go to the office and you perform tasks there and then you get back home. And then all of a sudden it was all just mixed together. Technology was probably my lifesaver. I mean, we went from being fully in offices to being totally remote overnight as Lexis Nexis South Africa. And we had to understand what that meant from a resource perspective, from a tools perspective, from a technology perspective. And it's been a really great learning curve. And now we're having much more in-depth conversations on what we call the future of work, because we're saying it can be done. People can work from home.
Right.
So, it's really changing the culture of the organization. But yeah, I've relied on technology. I mean, just as a mom, to multitask. I always say I can sit at my son's football game and still be, I'm still very present. However, I could do some emails. I could even be on a call with somebody if it's halftime or whatever. So, I've always used technology to enable me to multitask in that method, in that format. And I think what has really helped us as well during the COVID period has been you lose that touch, that personal touch with your teams. And so having the video conferencing facilities and being able to see somebody gives you at least half the picture of the body language, and so it helps to really create an environment where you can communicate effectively. So no, I think technology has been amazing. We could not have done what we do as Lexis Nexis if we did not jump onto the technology bandwagon. I mean, we always do from an innovation perspective, but this was from a supporting and enablement perspective, and making sure that we were able to take technology and use it as an enabler for our business, which is what technology is meant to do. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's never meant to be a business as such. It's meant to enable businesses. So yeah, I think as a mom, those things have been great. Being able just phones, when my kids were younger, I'll share something with you. I used to have this piece of software that where I could create gates, and because I have a great support system, which you have to have if you do a job like mine. Unfortunately, you can't be there all the time. And it would enable me to see when the driver or the au pair had passed the gate. So I always knew where my kids were. And when they got to school, it would ping me and it would say, child at school, So it's a sense of comfort, which then allowed me to be very productive because I know where my child is at. And I know when he or she is moving. And if they're meant to be somewhere at 3:00 and they're not, then I can phone. But just being able to pick up a phone and talk to them. You know me, I've been very strict about, do teenagers need phones?
She has been.
I have. I really want children to be children, and there is that side of technology that takes them to a place where they forget to be very present and enjoy life. So I have to say, during COVID, I happily handed over phones because it allowed me to be able to communicate better with them. I mean, even at home, I'm in an office and they're on the other side of the house. And so, we WhatsApp each other to say, it's mostly to ask what's for lunch or dinner. But yeah, technology, I mean, my love affair with technology has always been very deep. I'm a techie at heart. And so, but COVID has taught me to have a renewed respect for it in terms of how it enables us personally, not just from a solutions perspective, which has been humbling.
Well, this is awesome. Always fantastic to have a good chat with you. Thank you so much for your time with us today. And of course, we'll be continuing to work closely with you. So, the conversation continues. But thank you for sharing all of these pearls of wisdom with us today.
Thank you for the partnership.
Awesome.
All right, guys, and I hope that you enjoyed that interview as much as I did doing it. I really want to make this part of the show very interactive. I want to get as many of your questions as you can send. I'm going to do my best to get around to everyone and answer absolutely every question, at least at a minimum respond to everyone. So please feel free at this stage to have your questions come through to me. We'll address them live on the show. I'm going to do my best to give you some of my ideas and insights and perhaps some stuff that I gathered from the interviews that we've done. So we do have another interview coming up, and you know, as we set up for that next interview, which is going to be a very interesting interview that borders a little bit more into the conversation of AI here in Africa. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about my aspirations for the season. And you might think that I'm laboring the point, and perhaps I am. But it's just that I've been so excited about the show and I've been so excited about the season that I've just been thinking nonstop about what kind of value should we really bring. At the end of the day, so many people online are talking technology today, and there's just a lot of information. We're not short of information when it comes to technology. But what I'm finding, as someone who works flat out full time in the field of communicating the value of technology. That's what I do for a living. That's who I am, and that's my core work. I communicate the value of technology and how it can help people and businesses. And what am I finding? More and more and more, and particularly we've seen this through the pandemic, is that technology we've always known is nothing more than an enabler. And there's no value to technology if there isn't going to be a resultant impact to the organization and particularly to the individual. So I've been really racking my brains about how do we get that point communicated? How do we put the individual at the heart and soul of the show? So we have a comment here that's just come through, and I just want to take it up live. So Varuna says, definitely the right time to be in corporate, gives you a taste of an entrepreneurial environment whilst doing an office job. But this puts more dependence and focus on supporting technology. Very, very, very cool comment. I have to confess, I was not sure whether I was going to say this, but Varuna happens to be my sister. So it warms my heart to read a comment from my sister live on the show. Welcome. I didn't actually know that she was going to be attending the show. So this is awesome. Very exciting. Let's just look at the point though. So in terms of this concept of being entrepreneurial, the reality is that there is an entrepreneurial aspect to all the jobs that we're doing right now. And the COVID pandemic has accelerated that. We have to now arrive at work with the idea that we're selling our services in a very competitive marketplace. And that's really what the season is about. But before I waffle on too much about that, I just want to get going with the next insert, because I know that this next one is slightly longer and I want to make sure that we have some time for some final questions at the end. So over to the insert.
Hi, Nick. Welcome to our show. Really good to have you. So let's kick off with you telling us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks. And hi, everybody. It's great to be part of this podcast series. My name is Nick Bradshaw. I'm the founder of AI Media with the creators of AI Expo Africa, which is Africa's largest business-to-business 4IR trade event. So we're very much about technology in the real world. And we also run Africa's only free-to-read trade publication called Synapse, which showcases not only South African, but also African innovation in the 4IR technology space. And we essentially also provide industry analysis and insights and consulting to organizations, trade bodies, NGOs that have an interest in 4IR in the Africa region.
That's fantastic. So I have so many questions for you. I'm going to try to pace myself. I'm super curious about a whole bunch of things. Let's start off with the concept of AI in trade. What is that about, and what does that mean in simple terms?
Well, I think if everybody has been reading the newspaper, watching the news, or generally the mega trend of the fourth industrial revolution, which has certainly been present in the mainstream since, I would say, 4 to 5 years ago. It broadly exploded into the mainstream. I mean, the technologies themselves broadly have been around for some time, but with the advances in cloud computing, almost the free nature now of getting access to free storage, free tools. A lot of the big companies like Microsoft and Amazon and others providing startup programs where it's so. I mean, there's never been a cheaper time to create a business, that this has now meant that AI, the fourth industrial revolution, has become much more bedded in reality. And that's really what started the journey for our own company and this community, which it is a community-driven initiative in 2017 when we did the work, that there was no trade organization. There was no one really talking about AI, fourth industrial revolution, trade on the continent. There were a lot of technical meetups. There were a lot of researchers. There were even some well-established conferences like the Deep Learning Indaba talking very eloquently about the cutting-edge work that's being done on the continent, but there was no trade community. So that's essentially where we saw a gap. And we felt that the continent could benefit from this kind of dialogue, so which is what led to the creation of the community and the company and the event itself.
So this is very insightful. Now tell us, in terms of the continent, in terms of Africa right now, please bring me up to speed. Where are we at? What are we doing? What are the highlights in Africa right now?
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, Africa is a massive continent. And I think a lot of people kind of underestimate the size of the continent and actually what is going on. I think broadly the big trends right now, certainly that I've seen over the last 10 years of being based in Africa, I live in South Africa, but I've traveled extensively across the continent, is that it's a continent on the move. It's a continent which I think has got a very interesting 20 years ahead where, just like India was 20 years ago, Africa is now at this point where it's going to have what I would call a renaissance in terms of trade and innovation. So I think first of all, that's what's going on in Africa right now. It's poised for this huge growth. It's going to be predominantly driven by young people, as we know about the demographics and how that's changing on the continent. And then if you look at the kind of activities from a technology perspective, and in an investment perspective, you've got 4 clear hubs in Africa. You've got Egypt in the north, you've got Nigeria in the west, you've got Kenya in the east, and then you've got South Africa in the south. And those 4 countries attract most of the technology investment right now. Obviously, there's other investments going on in other countries around those satellites, if you want to call it. But essentially, we've had a big focus on fintech, certainly in the last, I'd say 5 to 10 years. We're now starting to see this emergence now with a big interest in crypto, DLT type technologies, mobile currencies. And now we're going to start seeing this next phase, which is a bigger interest in how technologies like AI, smart devices, can also then play a role in this next phase of investment. So I think we're starting to see those companies emerge. I think a lot of that investment that's driven in some of those regions, they have a bigger appetite for risk than we do maybe in South Africa. There is a lot of investment and capital around in South Africa, but it tends to be risk-adverse capital. So they typically invest in companies which are more established. But that's also changing. So there are more investors now starting, at the early stage to want to invest in African-originated 4IR technology startups, if I can call them that. And we ourselves actually launched a investor startup matching platform called the Deal Room, which we launched just 3 months ago. And we're actually trying to match startups in this space with investors. So it's an exciting time. It's a big continent, and there's a lot going on. I mean, clearly, it's not at the scale of China or North America or Europe. I mean, the sums of money that are being invested there are huge by comparison. But there are a lot of large organizations which don't have a presence here yet that are now starting to look at Africa as an area for growth and also an area to have an impact which goes beyond the traditional commercial capitalist paradigm. So they're actually looking at things like AI for good. There is a large AI for good movement. It's actually run out of Geneva by the ITU, International Telecoms Union. And that's a global movement looking at how AI and 4IR technologies can impact sustainable development goals. So there is not only this sort of, call it capitalist B2B trade community going on, there's also this kind of for good societal focus on these technologies. And actually there's a big focus on that in Africa as well. So that was quite a long answer to the question, but there is a lot going on.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite a big question that I asked, and you're quite right. There are many continents on this one continent of Africa. The subgroups within the continent are so fundamentally diverse that I don't think it would be fair to just give a blanket answer across the board. So let's double click on that. I like what you say about fintech, and I like what you say about the priority around crypto. Now, what can you tell us about, are there any success stories that you've seen emerge? Like anything that you've seen that is a story, an individual, a situation that you've come across and you feel, there's a good story that I want to share that I've come upon where it was a non-traditional kind of investment portfolio or, investment scenario where the individual didn't, seem like your most typical investment destination. And somehow we managed to get it right. And then we evolved the product and we've taken it to market, and there's a story behind that. Anything like that that you'd care to share that has, relevance within Africa?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's quite a few stories. I mean, I think in South Africa, we always get to hear about, a certain number which make it into the press and then they circulate for quite a few years. I mean, I'll choose a couple of slightly more obscure ones to give you an example. So one of the ones was a ophthalmic surgeon who was born in Nigeria and was lucky enough to get educated in North America and got a university schooling in America, in the USA. And his goal was, he's a trained surgeon, and he was a speaker at our conference in 2018. Dr. Stephen Adabo is his name. And he basically identified that there was a way in which he could use artificial intelligence. He basically looks at people's eyes. So he looks inside the eye, and you can tell a lot about the health of the body from looking at the retina of the eye. And what he's done is he's built algorithms to look at the different states of the retina. In a certain state, it's healthy. And then if it looks like something else, then obviously that's indicative of, his big one was diabetes, which is obviously a global problem. But there are other ailments that manifest when you look into the eye that you can see and diagnose. And he's building a business around that called Retina AI. And basically, he's come back to the Africa region on multiple occasions to actually talk about that and its application in an African context. So you can take a scan of the eye, you can even put that picture on a phone or send it up into the cloud, and then you can get a diagnosis and information back from that. So he's gone on to find investment, but that's a great example of someone who left the continent and then now is developing a technology which is potentially applicable to the region. And obviously he's looking for people to help grow that business in this region. But that's another interesting thing, because one of the big factors for investment back into the West African region is the diaspora. So you've got a lot of North American people who've now gone on to become very successful, who have their roots from West Africa. And actually now they're starting to look at investing back. So there is even actually an African diaspora network that it's run out of San Francisco, and there's a lot of people looking to invest back. So there's one example. Another example that's local to South Africa is a company called Enabler. They are working with an interesting hybrid model. So it's a mix of commercial and social good. And what they're doing is, just to explain it simply, a lot of the algorithmic models which are built, certainly in the environment that we're in, they need to be trained so that, if you scan a phone in front of the camera, the camera knows that that's a phone. Okay, so that's a very simple example, for example. So you train the camera to look at thousands of phones, and after a while it would then realize that if you present that it'll say that's a phone. Well, the same is true for most training environments for these technologies. So this Cape Town company have created a team of labelers who can be given pictures that may have various different things in them. Maybe they're trees or fruit or phones or cars or whatever that might be. And then they label those images to train the model to recognize whatever it is in that image. And then obviously that makes the algorithm more accurate. So they're using people from the townships. They're giving them a basic training program. They're giving them access to the labeling software where they can do that either on a laptop in a library, or they can do it as a group of people. If they're lucky enough to have access to that, to a laptop or a Wi-Fi connection. So basically they've got groups of people labeling the data, and then it's a corporate or a larger company that's actually paying for that to be done. So they earn money. The company and labeler earns money as well for providing the service to the corporate. And then basically it's a win-win-win. So the client gets a trained model, the enabler company gets some income, and then obviously the people doing the labeling also get income as well. So I think that's a great example of a homegrown hybrid model where data, as we know, being the new oil, if you keep hearing that, they're actually labeling data so that they make the models more accurate. And obviously that's another great success story for our region.
Yeah, these are great anecdotes. And I love hearing these stories at that anecdotal level. It really clears up the mystery and, really shows us some of the magic that's happening right here. So let's look at the semantics a little bit. I noticed that in terms of your messaging, there's a lot of you mentioned AI quite a lot, and not just a tech startup. So is there a reason for the accent on AI? Like how would AI be different to just your regular fintech startup that receives investment capital? Is there a specific thing that you go after that's beyond just your typical crypto fintech startup?
Well, I guess at the end of the day, there's two ways of looking at the technology that we're talking about, or any technology for that matter. Is the technology constrained to a vertical? So like a vertical industry, for example. So typically distributed ledger, crypto, Bitcoin, that broadly is in a vertical that, banking, payments, international banking, it's broadly in that kind of vertical. Obviously, there's lots of applications from it that can spin out into others as well. Artificial intelligence, on the other hand, can impact all industry verticals. You can have applications in accounting. You can have applications in mining. You can have applications of artificial intelligence in music generation, media, news reporting. You can now get a digitally generated news reader, for example, that is reading text that's typed in.
I must apologize, Nick. I may have asked the question incorrectly. I'm asking, what is different between your interest, or why do you mention AI? Because if you're talking about a traditional startup, a fintech startup, and I just use fintech as an example, my question applies to any industry or any type of tech startup. Why do you mention AI in your branding and in your messaging? Why do you mention specifically 4RR and AI when I could be a tech startup in Africa that I build an AWS application and it has nothing to do with AI algorithms or technology? Why do you specifically say AI? Is it because it's a cool buzzword, or is there a deeper thing that you're looking for behind that?
Sure. But yeah, I mean, I guess in my original answer to the question was that it's a transformative technology. It goes across all market verticals. Really, that's the simple answer. So AI is a collection of technologies. There are other technologies around it, like sensors and data management and tooling for building models and developing systems. But broadly, we used AI or AI Expo Africa as the title because it is a transformative technology that's impacting all industries. So, I mean, I hope that answers the question. Plus, AI Expo Africa kind of rung quite easily off the tongue. But we're not just solely about AI technologies per se. We've had people presenting on IoT devices, hardware,
Right.
etc.
And you see, that's actually what I'm querying. And I think it's an important qualification to make. And maybe the general audience out there might not necessarily pay attention to the fact that you're saying AI and not necessarily, just technology of today. And now I get the background because it could appear to someone like me that when I look at the title, that you are referring specifically to AI technologies, which, as you know, is a specific category of technology, a specific set of algorithms that would fall under that category. But now I understand from what you've just described that you're not limited in focus on that.
Sure. I think also people need to understand that if you looked at the tech landscape 20 years ago, so like at the turn of the 2000s, really back then, we went through a mobile revolution just towards the end of 1999 or the last 5 years of the 90s. And then we had the dot-com boom and bust. And then we went into the new paradigm of true mobile social media. And then we went into, the paradigm that we're in now. But back then, I mean, key themes like SaaS, software as a service, you could argue at the time that SaaS was this transformative topic, a bit like AI. I mean, it's a kind of transformative topic, if you want to call it that. But then within it, you get verticalization within that field, and those fields themselves can become quite complicated. So whilst it's quite a narrow title, it's actually a very, very broad field of technology innovation. And it's a challenge to keep up with it, to be honest.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? I think I must agree with you. And it's a very interesting point that you raised, the way SaaS was seen a good few years ago. I mean, I've been around for quite a while in this game, so I can relate. I know, at inception, how it seemed like quite a niche thing. And now it's a very well proliferated and expected format of delivering software. So very good point that you raised there. Just tell me let's talk a little bit informally here. What is your outlook? Where are things headed specifically? I'm speaking in terms of Africa continentally. In your estimation, where are we headed? What are the trends that you are expecting? Where are you placing your bets?
Well, I mean, if I look at my own sort of empirical observations of the landscape, I think we're going to see a lot more bigger companies showing interest in the region over the next 5 to 10 years. So you're going to see companies that have traditionally not avoided the region. It's just that there's other high growth areas that it's easier to focus on. I think a lot of companies are going to see that this is a potential growth area for them in the next 5 to 10 years. So there'll be new brands coming to the continent. I think Twitter just landed their first office in Africa in Ghana fairly recently. Google also built their first African AI R&D center in Ghana as well. So Ghana's become a very interesting country at the moment. But I think what you're going to also see is more investment coming into the region. I think we're going to see a lot more startups emerge out of this region. If you look at East Africa, it's very influenced by the Middle East and in India. So I think you're going to see a lot of investment, particularly, and we're already seeing it with things like agriculture, food security, resource provision. And then you've obviously got this mega trend of natural resource provision, mining and extraction. And I think hopefully Africa will get smarter at how it monetizes the assets that it has on the continent. I think if you look at the Prime Minister of Ghana recently announced that they don't want to export cocoa anymore. They actually want to manufacture chocolate, finished product in their country and export the finished product. So that's kind of like, you think that's innovation around something that's been around for quite a long time, but just that one innovation and changing that in the economy can make a massive difference to the economy. So I think we'll see economies get smarter. I mean, Kenya was the first country in Africa to produce its national strategy for AI and blockchain in July 2019. You're looking at countries like Tunisia and Egypt starting to become a real hotbed of innovation and an investment destination, very much influenced by Europe. And then, as I say, West Africa, I think we're going to see a lot more investment pour into that region. I think recently Senegal announced it's going to have a smart city to the east of Dakar. We ourselves in South Africa have announced 3 smart cities: Durban, Lanseria, and Pretoria. So it's an exciting time, and these things need to be built, and they will get built, and they'll be built with local people and companies from outside the continent. So I think it's an exciting place to be right now.
Yeah, I have to agree. The prospects are looking brighter than ever. Now, the tech landscape globally has evolved in a very interesting way. We're seeing more and more what China has been contributing. We've even seen what Russia has been able to contribute. Of course, the US is front and center in most of these conversations. From an Africa point of view, instead of us just seeing us as a geo where we do a copy and paste, of other best practices, what are some of the things that you see possible for Africa contributing and Africa bringing to the party that's unique, that's different, that's best practice in itself, that isn't just a copy and paste from the West into the local environment? Anything that you see from that perspective?
Yeah, look, I mean, on the first point, I mean, it is genuinely hard to be truly original. I think even in music, I mean, music's been around a long time, and it is genuinely hard to be original and to be innovative and to create something truly groundbreaking. I mean, that you need part luck, timing, and investment, but you need ideas. Now, we're a continent that's not short of ideas. So I think there is going to be truly original innovation emerging from the continent. I think some of the challenges around that are that you're competing in a global landscape. So if you come up with an idea for a business that's doing X, and you've got 10 other companies doing X in North America and 10 in Asia and 10 in Europe, they're going to be, those 10, the 30 companies are going to get probably 10 to 100 times more funding to get them to succeed than you can find here. So I think on the one hand, we will get innovation, but at the same time, if you don't have the investment to match it, you might get outgunned. So I think we'll see a positive, but it's also married to a negative. I think our innovation model is also different. So I think enough people have now said that trying to replicate Silicon Valley here doesn't work. And it was a very interesting presentation at our event last year by Karim Beguir, who's the CEO of InstaDeep in Tunisia. He gave a very interesting summary about how different regions in the world support innovation. And the African innovation model is definitely about collaboration. So it's about corporates working with entrepreneurs and investors and communities working together. And I think that's something unique in terms of maybe a model that the continent's evolving, mainly through circumstance. But in the absence of lots of capital, you have to try a different model. And I think we've pioneered in that space. Plus, we're a continent of 54 countries. I think there are over 2,000 languages or dialects of the languages on the continent. Those languages, that's a unique thing. And there's groups of people looking at translating those languages into automated text to speech and speech to text, text to text. There's a whole massive project going on right now across the continent in that regard. So, you've got the free trade agreement, which has just been signed. I'm not sure what impact that might have at the moment, but it's definitely a sign that the continent is wanting to change and embrace some of the global initiatives. So, plus, I think there's also some interesting philanthropic investments being made in the region, which maybe the things that they're trying to solve, the tough challenges that they're trying to solve, will probably not attract investment from traditional sources. So if you look at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and you look at some of the other philanthropic organizations, they are also supporting funding for solutions to problems which exist here. So I think we shouldn't forget about that part of the equation as well, because I think we'll see some very interesting innovation in that regard.
All right, that's great. Really, really, really solid insight, and I must be honest, I enjoy listening to you, and I don't just say this to everyone. I'm not trying to be super nice. Do you perhaps have time for just maybe one more question? Would that be okay?
Yeah, fire away. No problem at all.
All right, excellent. So the pandemic, what has the pandemic produced, if anything, in Africa that we didn't necessarily see coming in this area? Anything that popped into view probably ahead of schedule because of what just went down with lockdowns, etc.
That's a good question. I mean, there's quite a lot of things which have happened post-COVID or during COVID, and we're still kind of not even post-COVID yet. We're in the middle of it still. So, look, I think people got globally trained last year to accept there is a different way of working. I've worked from home, or I've been a mobile worker for 19 years now. So the impact on me and my day job is minimal. I mean, I think what also in finding a different way of working, people have discovered new tools for doing that. Obviously, we're using Zoom today. One thing I discovered, which actually was originated by a Nigerian founder, was Calendly. Calendly allows you to book meetings using a kind of intermediary piece of software.
I love Calendly. I had no idea it was Nigerian. No idea.
It's a Nigerian founder, yeah.
Oh, I see. So it didn't emerge from Nigeria. It was built in the US.
I think he's based in the US, but he's originally a Nigerian founder. So all credit to him. He revolutionized my way of working last year. I actually sent him a personal note on LinkedIn and said, thank you very much for making my life a lot easier, because basically they've innovated around something very simple, the calendar. So this is not always about algorithms and, like the Coco story earlier on. You can create radical change on the simplest of things just by looking at it differently. So just like we're not going to export cocoa beans, we're actually going to farm them and process them locally, can create a whole new economy. And I think this is what people like him and others are doing because of COVID. They're finding a different way of working. We're finding a new way of innovating, and we're speeding it up. So we're compressing the time to market because you have to. Some industries have been so impacted that the sense of urgency, if it wasn't there before, it is now. You look at the industry that we're in, where we run our event. The events industry has literally been on hold for 14 months. We took our event online. We more than doubled the number of people that joined us last year, and we're already double the number of people that have signed up from last year now, and we're still 4 months away from the show. So people have now said, right, online, I accept it now. This is a way of working. We're never going back to the entire population commuting in the way we did, for example. That's got a positive impact on the planet. We're not sitting in cars as long. We're going to spend more time with family and friends and finish work earlier or be home earlier. We're going to have hopefully a better interaction with families and not the parents being out all the time. So I think some of the changes because of COVID are more fundamentally simpler and more impactful than we realize at the moment, because I don't think we're ever going to go back to the way things were before. So I think that's been a big one. So new ways of working, tools for doing things in new ways, people thinking about things differently, maybe people reflecting on the fact that maybe the way they were working before and their work-life balance was wrong, and now this has given them a chance to correct it. So I think there's a lot of softer benefits that have come from COVID. I mean, tragically, there have also been a lot of negatives. People have lost jobs, businesses have gone out of business, people have died, and that's tragic. And I think, if you look at how different countries have tackled the pandemic, some countries have taken a very harsh leadership style, other countries haven't, and there's big differences that you can see between them. It's still a serious problem, and we need to treat it carefully. So, but maybe from it, I think we've created a more innovative mindset around solving problems than we had before. It takes a crisis sometimes to light the fire of innovation, and maybe the net positive is that very thing itself. someone said to me recently, nothing changes if nothing changes. And when you think about it, it's a fairly Zen-like statement, but it's very true. If nothing changes, broadly, not much else changes. And, you know, if you look at things like how Jeff Bezos had a long-term vision around online retail, I mean, I remember attending a 1999 MBA course where one of the senior lecturers didn't think e-commerce was ever going to take off. So, you know, that's 20 years ago, 21 years ago. So, you know, not everybody's got that long view into the future. And, but some people do. And if you have a long-term view and you can deliver tactically in the now, the chances are you will deliver on that long-term vision. And I think we'll see a lot more successes in that regard. I think people are going to take a longer-term vision on what they do and not just always think about the short term.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a very, very, very insightful chat. I've thoroughly enjoyed all of the golden nuggets that you've shared. Lots of pearls of wisdom in, you know, from different perspectives. Very enlightening. So it's been a pleasure to speak to you today. Thank you so much for sharing your views. Thank you for giving us some of your time. And then I look forward to many such conversations if you will allow us the honor. And I hope it was you know, good for you as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Christian. And if anybody wants to come to our event, it's a free ticket event, and it's you can find more about us on www.aiexpoafrica.com.
All right, so I hope you guys thoroughly enjoyed that. I did, admittedly, manage timing not the greatest way today. I'm being quite euphemistic about it. I could have managed our time better to address more questions. So here's what we're going to do. We want to be respectful of your time. We're running over very slightly. We have collected together all of the questions that you've sent. We've got fantastic questions, just a rich collection of really beautiful questions. And I'm going to make it a point to address this set of questions in the next show, and if not there, certainly within the series itself. But in particular, there's going to be a very valiant effort on my part to get to all the questions in our next show, and I will build out the content and the layout of the show to accommodate for that. On that note, thank you so much for joining us. Please take a minute to complete the survey. I do realize that the timing wasn't great, but as you can see, we are testing out a new show format where we are going over to inserts, and then we are getting together back around the fire to have a bit of a chat and discuss and take questions. So it is a new format, and we need your feedback. Are you enjoying it? Do you think that the all live format is preferable? Please share that with us. And as I said, I will be sure to address all of the questions that have come through in our next episode and beyond. On that note, thank you so much for attending, and have a great 2 weeks.